So wonderful to be here. What a fantastic day we've got in store. Do come in, do come in. Isn't London amazing on a day like this? It's only 2 days of the year when it's like this, but it's amazing when it's like this. As I was announced, my name is William Lewis. I'm the CEO of Dow Jones, and I'm also the publisher. Come, Roland, come in. Yeah, marvellous. A little bit late, but I'm the publisher. I'm the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, which is America's most trusted newspaper. So this is a fantastic thing. My job's to introduce this today. I'm now going to introduce another amazing person, Ryan Fuller from Microsoft. Ryan has spent 20 years, and he is actually going to appear from that door any minute now. He's spent 20 years helping companies make data-driven decisions as an engineer, a strategic advisor and CEO of Volumetrics, which is a leading people analytics company acquired by Microsoft in 2015. So Ryan, I'd like to welcome you to the stage. A little clap for Ryan, thank you very much. Welcome, Ryan. Ryan, actually you already know this, so I'm going to tell them. Ryan currently leads Microsoft's workplace analytics, My Analytics product teams focused on driving productivity through behavioral analytics. And I've got Ryan for 9 minutes, so I'm going to crack on. No questions from the floor just for this. It's just me and Ryan, so thank you very much. Ryan, welcome to London Town. Thank you for doing this very much. Microsoft, I think it's fair to say, has undergone an extraordinary transformation under Satya, who joined in 2014. You joined a year later. Tell us about that transformation. Tell us how you've become a $1 trillion company. How different has it been under Satya?
Well, I came after him, so for me, it just gets better all the time. But I think one of the things that's unique about him, and he's actually been at Microsoft for close to 20 years, but he became CEO 4 or 5 years ago. He focuses a lot on culture, and I think if you were to ask him what's the biggest driver of the success of the company over the last few years, I think I'm pretty confident he'd say culture because he talks about it every day. It's kind of a broken record, actually. But one of the things, if you haven't heard the double click on it, is growth mindset is this idea that he brought in, where he likes to say he's taking Microsoft from a culture of know-it-alls to a culture of learn-it-alls, right? And his example is always, if you have 2 groups of people and one group is dedicated on asserting that they already know everything, and the other group is dedicated to learning everything, regardless of the starting point, over time, the learn-it-all culture will outperform. And that's really what he's been driving. Okay,
so how much time should people in the room devote to culture and to this learn-it-all concept? Should it be half of their time? Should it be a third of their time? What's your judgment?
Don't know the exact percentage, but I guess I'd say for CEOs at an event like this, culture, both at a strategic level, and just because it's no one's full-time job at your company, right? Everybody else has a day job. It's really up to the CEO to be the steward of the culture. And fundamentally, your people are what drive all your outcomes, and the culture is the sort of the container in which they operate and allows them to do their best work. So I think especially in this era where we're, pick your buzzword of fourth industrial revolution, digital transformation, we're kind of, all this technology is disrupting whole industries. You don't really know what the next few years are going to look like. And I think companies need to figure out how to harness the collective experience and expertise and wisdom of their people and put them into a mindset of curiosity and learning and adapting. Because if not, fundamentally your business is based on how you operate today. And so if you don't figure out a way to get people to think into the future, you're going to end up being reactive to some other company that either starts from the ground up with some digital first strategy or some competitor that figures it out. So I think getting into a culture of learning is a strategic imperative.
Okay. So we haven't had in London a cluster of top performers in a room like this for years. So let's talk about top performers. People in the room are top performers and they also employ top performers. Tell us about what you have learned about how to improve the performance of top performers at Volumetrics and now more recently at Microsoft.
Yeah, so and maybe taking a step back, so that you mentioned I lead this workplace analytics team. One of the challenges with culture is that it's this fuzzy, ambiguous concept a lot of the time. What our software does is it helps you quantify the behaviors. It helps you quantify what actually happens at work. So we use things like emails and meetings and documents and chats and all these different tools that people use all day to do their job. And using the right level of privacy and anonymization, aggregation, you can figure out the work patterns. And so fundamentally, culture is a set of behaviors, how work happens. But so once you have the behaviors, you can start to understand how those behaviors actually drive different outcomes, right? So out here is profits and operating metrics, et cetera. Over here is all your people. It's all this gray area in between that this data can help connect for you. And that's, so, a good example, take your top performers, certain teams that are always somehow building great products ahead of schedule, or your best salespeople that are driving a different, outsized portion of your revenue. Like, what is it that they do differently than everybody else? Right? What can you learn from that bright spot inside your organization that you can then scale out to the rest of the organization?
And what distinguishes them most, would you say? I mean, what would you pick out one or two things for us?
Yeah, well, it's different. It's different in every company. That's what's unique about it, right? Every company's culture is unique. I think one of the things we talk about, it's a lot of times management teams focus on figuring out what's broken and going and trying to fix that in the organization. What we often recommend is go look for the bright spots. Go look for what is working, right? You already know that there's some places that are working, but find the pattern that enables that work. So a good example, take a B2B sales organization. You might do the analysis by understanding what your top performers are doing differently with customers. So you might learn they spend more time with customers. You might learn they bring a different set of specialists to accounts. You might learn they have different networks inside the company. You might learn they build more relationships at each customer. Who knows? And it's going to be dependent on the unique aspects of your business. But once you get that sort of fingerprint of what success looks like, you can start sharing that information to everybody else. And a lot of times, it's very easy stuff that just wasn't intuitive because nobody actually could see from the right vantage point to understand, oh, what works is you need to go, classic example, it's our best salespeople build 6 relationships in each account, and everybody else only builds 2 relationships because they're spreading themselves too thin.
So it's that simple.
It can be that simple.
Okay.
Right? And then if everybody all of a sudden has that new guidance, we've had companies that have generated hundreds of millions of dollars in incremental revenue in months, not years. And so then you get into this continuous improvement loop of let's everybody think about what happened yesterday from the collective experience of the company, put it into practice tomorrow, and imagine if your company just gets better and better basically every day.
Okay, and is there, on that basis, is there an optimum level of number of meetings each day or each week that people should be thinking about? Because we all have so many meetings. Is there, what would you tell us about that?
We just did a really interesting study with a professor at Harvard Business School looking at data across tens of thousands of companies and the average number of hours people spend in meetings per week correlated with overall revenue. And it's kind of as you'd expect that collaboration drives better productivity per person up to a point, and then it falls off a cliff.
What's that point?
Yeah.
Come on, what's the number, Ryan?
Yeah, we've decided not to tell the world.
But generally speaking, people should think they probably are spending too much time in meetings.
Well, generally thinking people should think about time like they think about money. It's scarce, and you should make sure you get a good ROI on the time that you spend. And it starts at the top, right? Again, CEOs are the stewards of the culture of the company, and we do this sometimes where we've looked at like weekly staff meetings for a CEO and just quantify the amount of prep that goes into like some of those meetings, or just a simple ask on a weekend where you just ask somebody in your team to answer a quick question. It could be tens of thousands of hours of work that happens across hundreds of people that get forwarded that email. So CEOs being thoughtful and trying to get some better data and insight into what's actually happening is pretty important.
Okay, and how do people, once we identify the things that are working, and that's pretty difficult in itself, how do we make sure those things are shared in a company, and how do you protect them when there's some kind of restructuring? What's the situation? How do we make that happen?
Well, once you have the core data, I think you use what you use to do everything else that you run the business on, right? If you didn't have financial data and budget versus actual, you couldn't put it in the hands of the people that need to manage the budget. Once you have this data around your culture and how to be most successful, you just use the same mechanisms you have, and we know how to manage against goals. The data is missing mostly today.
All right, I think I'm out of time. One final question. What's the one thing that everyone in the room should take away from this morning and put into action as early as tomorrow morning to improve their own personal productivity and to improve the productivity of their teams, please?
Big question. Well, I think it's really that you already know this. Culture is critical, and I think learning is the most critical aspect of culture in the times that we live in. Being at an event like this is actually fantastic role modeling experience because you're here presumably to learn from one another. Finding ways to encourage your teams to do that and be able to take risks and not be punished for failure, I think is going to be probably the most important tone you can set from the top.
Okay, that's a good positive way to end. Thank you very much. There will be feedback forms on each of the sessions and so on. This will be comfortably the best and highest performing session of the day. On that basis, I'd like you to give Ryan a very loud round of applause. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.